wonder I can think at all. And my lack of education has...
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Atheist Experience. That was going to be the theme song for all the Kansas alumni now that the Kansas Board of Education has decided to change the definition of science.
True.
And at least you'll still be able to read. I'm Matt Dillahunty. I'm your host this week, filling in for Russell Glasser, and joining me is our former host, Ashley Perrien.
Thank you very much for having me.
We are a live call-in program. We'll have the number up for you soon. It's Sunday, November 27th, 2005. And if we're not live, you won't ever see the telephone number, but you'll still be able to contact us by writing to tv@atheist-community.org. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. And the ACA has weekly meetings at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road every Sunday at 11:30, except for the third Sunday of the month, when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center, which is located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe, and that begins at 12:30. Both meetings are open to any atheist or atheist-friendly individuals. Also on the second Sunday of every month, we have a board meeting, which is at 10 o'clock at Schlotsky's Deli on South Lamar. Members are encouraged to attend, but only board members can vote. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors an internet audio program called The Nonprofits. And that's on every Saturday at 2 p.m. Central on freethoughtradio.com. It's live every other Saturday and will be live this coming Saturday. That's hosted by Jeff D., Dennis Lubay, and also features Russell Glasser and myself. You can listen at freethoughtradio.com. You can chat over IRC. The instructions are available either at the ACA website or at nonprofitsradio.com. In addition to the various programs and meetings that we also have a number of social events throughout the week. On Mondays, we have Godless Gamers at the home of Russell Glassers, the normal host for the show. And we'll play board games, card games, anything that strikes our fancy. And sometimes we don't play much at all. We'll have a good conversation. Tomorrow night, we probably won't be doing much gaming, as we're going to watch a special edition of Wife Swap, which is going to feature Reginald Finley, who's better known as the Infidel Guy. He has an internet audio program as well, and his wife is going to be trading places with a fundamentalist Christian.
Yeah, pastor's wife.
Yeah. On Tuesdays, we have a new event, Unholy Rollers, and that's at Playland Skating Rink at 183 in Burnett off McCann Road, just behind the Nissan dealer. It's adult night there, so you have to be 18 or over to attend. It runs from 7 to 10:30, and you can come on out and join us. We don't yet have a good way of saying, hey, we're over here, although you may see this. I may not be there this Tuesday because I hurt my leg over the vacation, but if I am there, then we'll set that up at a table and you'll be able to find us there. On Thursdays, we have Atheist Happy Hour at Antonio's Tex-Mex, which is on the southbound access road for I-35, just south of 183. Additionally, after the show, the cast and crew and any of the viewers who'd like to join us have been going to dinner, and we're currently going to Mongolian Barbecue at 117 San Jacinto. It's downtown. There's a map available on the ACA website. The show is on the air till 6. After cleanup, we normally would get down there somewhere around 6:45. As with all of the events, any atheist or atheist-friendly people are welcome to join us. If you're coming down to preach, proselytize, or provoke, don't bother. Just call the program when the number's up, and you can tell us why you're right and why you think we're wrong, or whatever it is that strikes your fancy. We're going to have the number up soon. As I said before, it's a live call-in program, and if we're not live, you won't see the number, but you can still reach us via the email, tv@atheist-community.org. And having said that, we'll turn it over to Ashley. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Been away for a while now, but I've been missing it.
Does it feel weird?
Yes.
Cool. He got so used to doing it, was so good at it all the time, every week in the host spot, that I'm glad it makes you feel a little weird.
Not only is it weird to be back, but it's weird to be on this side of the table.
Yeah.
So.
We can trade seats if you want.
Nah, I'm okay. All right. Anyway, looking around just for some stuff to go over on the show and find out what was interesting and fun to talk about. I came across this from one of the sites. It's from a site called the Rant.us. A common sense news issues e-zine with an admittedly conservative slant. fun right off the bat. But it's this rant by this guy called Joseph Harris called "Thanks for the Validation of Christianity." And I'll read, maybe not the whole thing, but at least some snippets here that will be enlightening. There is little doubt that enmity exists between the church and the world. God is mocked, churches are belittled, and individual believers are cast as backward and intolerant. Now, please get off of your "I'm so persecuted" rant. There are over 80% of the population of this country is religious. A vast majority of them are going to claim to be claimed to be Christian of some form or another. The leader of this country, and some would say the most powerful man in the world, is a very strong Christian. There are churches on most corners of streets these days. So to pull out this "I'm so persecuted and I can't get a fair treatment" and such is just plain lying. It means absolutely nothing. You lose all credibility by trying to pull that stunt. To continue. The ACLU is at the forefront, leading the attack under the guise of protecting the civil liberties of Americans and illegal aliens, Muslim terrorists, etc. Again, trying to downplay the ACLU and say they're anti-Christian and they're anti-American and whatever. In reality, civil liberties in this country are not in danger, but religious liberties are constantly challenged. Pseudoscience has waged war against God through an unproven theory of the origin of man, stating the science of God cannot be proven, while demonstrating its inability to prove the theory of macroevolution through empirical evidence. Again, there's no such thing as micro or macroevolution. It's one thing that says things change over time through certain processes. And to cut it off and say, okay, this one we can accept, but that one we can't, is willful ignorance. There's mountains of evidence out there. There's mountains of books. There is more data than you can shake a stick at for all of this. So to say that you don't believe in evolution and it's an unproven theory and it's on the same par as intelligent design is a lie. It means absolutely nothing. You do not know what the theory is in a scientific context. Intelligent design is what scientists would call a hypothesis. Evolution is a theory. It is something that's backed up by mountains of evidence. Again, another example, the Earth goes around the sun. That's a theory. Electricity is a theory. Gravity is a theory. Are you going to say that, those don't really mean anything, so we can really say whatever we want and it's all on the same ground? No, it's not. Okay. Anyway, let's go on here and see what else we can find to just straighten out.
Well, this actually kind of dovetails into that.
What is that?
The 64% of the American people believe that religion is under attack, according to a new poll by the Anti-Defamation League. And 53% of Americans believe that religion as a whole is losing its influence in American life.
I haven't seen any of that.
This is preached from the pulpits to try and stir up the masses.
Yeah.
They're coming after you and your religion, and they don't want you to pray, and they're trying to make it so you can't love Jesus anymore. It's a crock. They're lying to you. What's really happening? If you're a Christian, nobody's trying to specifically infringe upon your rights. What's happening is we're trying to end your infringement upon everybody else's rights. Just because you happen to be in the majority doesn't mean you get to tell everybody else what they can and can't do and legislate your opinions on everybody else. But yet they keep saying this, and it stirs them up and gets them to the polls.
Yeah.
So, maybe I should take a hint from their playbook and let all the atheists out there and the closet atheists and the people who are just, not head over heels in love with, Falwell and Robertson, that they're taking your rights away. These people, and they're lying. They're lying to do it.
Yes.
Yes.
And that actually goes back to what they're saying in here, too. Again, this is one of my big rants about the religious right and how they often use the word public to mean not private, not inside your closet and hidden away from from view by anybody else. So he says, and now we come to that special time of year when we must stuff everything religious looking of a Christian nature into the closet. The baby Jesus in the manger and every vestige of anything smelling of Christianity must be burned at the altar of sensitivity to the religions of others and the atheism of a few. Bollocks.
But if that's what you believe, I got a match.
If you want to do it, that's fine. But not once has no atheist that I know of, and nothing that I would ever support, to say, as a private individual or a private business, if you want to have the nativity scene and a big old cross in front of your store and the Ten Commandments, go for it. I may not like it, but hey, it's a private business. You can do whatever you want. If you want to have it on your church's yard, go for it. That's a place for it. What we mean by public is government sponsorship. It's the government saying, yes, I agree with you there, and I don't agree with you over there, and all of you other people can just, shut up and take it. That's the issue that we have. Government sponsorship of something and government promotion of one idea over another is not what the government is for. The government is here to represent the people. I am one of the people. And so by saying that we want to have a Ten Commandments monument up, that's not representing me, or dare I say, a vast number of people out there, even Christians. And so to say that we want to get any remains of religious celebrations and holidays and Christianity out of public life, in their way of saying it, it's a lie. And that's all it is. Again, if you want to have it up in your front lawn or your church's yard, go for it. I couldn't have a single complaint about that.
Yeah, they do the same thing. This twisting of private to public.
Yeah.
They do the same thing with regard to the prayer in school issue. They'll make the announcement that those evil atheists have taken prayer out of school. No, they didn't. Nobody did that. Nobody's ever done it. It's probably never ever going to happen. You can't tell somebody you're not allowed to pray. Prayer hasn't been removed in school. What was removed was mandatory prayer in school, keeping you from forcing other people to have a moment of prayer or say or read a recited prayer to your God when there are children of all different religious beliefs, including no religious belief, in that classroom. It was mandatory prayer that was removed, not prayer. And these lies that just keep coming out of let me just twist this a little bit. Well, evolution is just a theory. Yeah. Well, they removed prayer from school. Well, they won't let me do nothing in public. No, you can stand on the street corner and preach doomsday until it shows up. Feel free.
Yeah, one that got me too. Several years back, and I've gotten it more recently too, there's an email that's going around, supposedly written by Pat Robertson's daughter or something like that. I can't remember, some well-known preacher's daughter, saying that, we have kicked God out of our school and stuff like that. And they're talking about school shootings and saying these are natural things because God has been kicked out of the school. And I responded to one of these emails to the person who sent it to me and said, basically, if God is so petty that an infinitely powerful being would say, those people wouldn't let me in, therefore I'm going to let people die. I'm going to let little children die, is insensitive and cruel and not any kind of God that would be worthy of any form of worship whatsoever.
Yeah, I've said similar things many times. When you take a look at the God in the Old Testament, as he's portrayed as this tribal God, this leader of the Jews who's instructing them to kill this nation and kill this nation and slaughter them and kill everybody but the little girls, and you can keep them for your own little sex slaves and cut off 100 foreskins over here and all this stuff. I, of course, as an atheist, don't believe that God exists. But if he does exist, he's a malign thug, as Mark Twain said, and he's unworthy of worship. So,
yeah. But anyway, thanks for the validation of Christianity is what this article is titled. And the point of that is, so for all the hatred, attacks, and lawsuits against God and that which is Christian and moral, again, tying those two together, Christian and moral, I say, thanks for the validation. I appreciate the validation by this ungodly world to the God of the universe and his followers. Jews and Christians have been attacked more than anyone in history. I'm so persecuted. The Jews have endured more attempts at genocide throughout their history than any ancient people on the face of the earth. And true Bible-believing Christians have been targeted throughout the church history.
I always find it funny when Christians especially, go out of their way, and some Jews now as well, to link the two,
Yeah.
the Jews and Christians, because if those were the only two religions left on the planet, they'd be at each other's throats.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It would be we're the good guys and you're the bad guys. But because they share parts of a book, but oddly enough,
pretty
Islam
small portion.
should probably include it in there as well,
Yeah.
since they all stem from the same,
exact same thing.
original beliefs.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it seems incredibly dishonest that, and it's that way within Christianity itself too, but the Protestants and the Catholics.
Yes.
A lot of Protestants will teach that, Catholics are no better than, that's just a Mary cult. They're not real Christians.
true.
They're not going to heaven. They got all these rituals and
idol
nonsense,
worship and
extra
saints.
books that aren't in the real Bible that God gave me. And they'll come down on Catholics. Yet when it's time to count up how many Christians are in the country,
they're
we're
right there
counting the
with them.
Catholics. We're
Yeah.
counting them then because
Yeah.
they got the most.
Yeah, yeah. I think actually there was some survey done. I can't remember exactly the details, but if you count all the non-religious people, and you split up Catholics the way that they would want to be splitted up,
Right.
atheists outnumber all of them.
Yeah.
Because the Baptists, for instance, there are fewer Baptists
Then there
than are atheists.
Well, non-religious. I don't think-
Non-religious. Yeah,
Because that comes out, the non-religious section comes out to about 14% or so.
Exactly.
But those who actually openly declare atheism is around 7 or 8%.
Yeah.
But the thing is that a lot of people will say, agnostic or humanist. There's a lot that would answer humanist on there. And, in a sense, it's easier to lump it all together as the non-religious because that 14%, regardless of whether you ascribe to secular humanism or prefer to use this title over that, you're all pretty much in the same boat, or we're all pretty much in the same boat.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Unless you're Aurelian.
and then you're just weird.
And then, I don't, it's not fair if we only pick on Christians. So I got to say that the Aurelians, they're a little kooky.
Yeah. And they're on the side of the intelligent designers.
Yeah.
And they're on our side when it comes to other religious arguments and trying to get religion into government.
Yeah, they're playing both sides. You know who
Yeah.
else is playing both sides? Ken Ham, the Australian creation scientist. He is... He has come out and said in the last week or so that, or maybe it was earlier, I read it in the last week or so, that intelligent design is a Trojan horse for creationism.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's, while he obviously believes in intelligent design and creationism, he's at least being honest, which is more than some intelligent design proponents will do, and actually saying, yeah, you know what, it is just Trojan horse for creationism. It is creationism in a lab coat. The government came out and said, you can't teach creationism, so we said, let's rename it and make it look scientific. If we throw some numbers and, we can poke holes at, where evolution, because, when the process when you're validating evolution and you're finding, let's say, fossils, and you find fossil A and fossil B, well, the creationists, and I'm not going to call them ID folks, we'll just stick with creationists, they say, well, you don't have a transitional fossil in between them. So then you find a fossil between them. And they say, well, what about the ones between here and the ones between here?
You've just made the problem twice as bad because now you have two unexplained gaps.
And when we find the ones that are in between, well, what about those? You can poke holes like that all day long, but the fact is, the evidence continues to mount to support it. There isn't any fossil evidence that violates the theory of evolution. There are fossils that appear through different strata in the geological area, but they all have good explanations. Tree roots growing in between it, or plate tectonics, is slight shifting. But when we discover, I don't know, a human skeleton, amongst dinosaur remains. Oh, wait, they did that up in no, they didn't. They just found a footprint. Those guys up in northern Texas who are trying to
it was a badly carved one.
Yeah. And they found an axe up there too, like an iron axe or whatever.
That's right. Yeah, it was in the footprint. There was like a metal axe.
Yeah.
That the dinosaur had stepped on or something.
Yeah, and I think they dated it to like 75 years. But
yeah, I mean, there's so much out there, and again, there's so much evidence to back these things up.
Yeah.
That to be espousing the idea that this has no relevance and it's just a theory, not understanding what that means and such.
Yeah, well, that's what
is
they do.
again willful ignorance.
Yeah, it's much like we were talking about before when preaching from the pulpit that they're taking prayer to school. The intelligent design proponents, the creationists, they're doing exactly the same thing. They're twisting truths. They're relying on the ignorance of the public. And I'm not trying to be insulting to everybody out there, but a lot of people don't understand, that a scientific theory isn't anything like saying, "Oh, I've got a theory." I mean, the layman's definition is completely different. And when science is about determining, based on what we know and the evidence around, and using a good, reliable methodology, what is the most likely, most reasonable answer, the most probable definition of the reality around us? And it can be wrong. Science has been wrong about many things over the years, but the thing is, the only thing that ever proves that science is wrong is more science.
Yeah.
There's never been an issue where science has made this announcement, this theory, and some ancient religion has said, nope, our book says it's this way, and that ends up being right. Now, is it possible? I guess. But the thing is, if the only way you can validate what's real is to use the scientific method, it seems really dishonest for these people to rely on science for the light bulbs, the television, the computer, the medicine. And, modern medicine is the result, in many cases, of modern biology, which is only possible because of the theory of evolution. Yeah. Viruses and bacteria, and how all this is resolved, and new medicines are come out, and they'll rely on this, and yet, I don't really believe in evolution. Well, you're wrong. It's that simple.
Pretty much all there is to it.
I'm sorry that science disagrees with your, personal opinion, but when it does, the more reasonable answer is what you tend to rely on.
Yeah. Last night I was also watching on DVD. I've got the Penn and Teller's bullshit.
Yeah, I have
excellent
first 2 seasons.
Show. Excellent show. But I was watching the one on creationism, and they were going over I can't remember if it was Dover or Cobb County, I think. They were talking about the votes that they were having to try and take evolution out of the books or put intelligent design in the books, things like that. And they made a good point that a lot of the ideas are getting up there saying, let's just present the two sides, the two opposing theories that are out there, and let the kids think critically about it and decide which one they want to believe. The problem is, science is not a democratic process. You can't go up to a bunch of third graders and say, okay, we think this is how math works, but here's a different idea, and if y'all want to do it your way, you can just decide which one is right. No, there is a right answer and there is a wrong answer. And intelligent design is just flat out wrong. There is nothing to back it up.
Yeah,
and
or if it's right, it's unproven.
And just because you like the idea doesn't mean anything. It's not a democratic process where you get to say, I like that idea better, so I'm going to believe that one. No, if it's not backed up, you're wrong. Or, very probably
you're
wrong,
not proven correct.
Exactly.
Yeah, and yet the evidence that contradicts you is very compelling.
It's voluminous.
And a lot of those people are in the same position that I was in many years ago, and there's some intelligent people involved in the intelligent design movement.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll apply critical thinking and skepticism and rational reasoning to every part of the universe except for that little piece that where the religious belief lies. And as soon as anything contradicts that belief, now all of a sudden we have special rules. We're gonna go through the fallacy of special pleading and say, well, and it's like when we were talking about the arguments for and against God, everything needs to have a cause except God. See, we got these special little rules for what's in religion, because the truth is, if you take away those special rules and evaluate them the same as everything else, those claims fall apart.
Yeah.
And in reality, at least in my opinion, those religious claims, not only should they be subject to the same rules and evidential standards as any other claim, they may actually be subject to harsher and stricter rules because the claims are so exceptional. If you make if I make a claim that, I just got a new car, that's nothing. You don't need a lot of evidence for that. As soon as I make the claim that, there's a pixie living in my underwear drawer that, restitches my name on whatever, well, wow. Now we've got to take a look at that, and we need a lot more evidence for that. And no, I don't actually have names stitched.
Just checking.
I was going to go off on a side thing about the Mormon underwear, because I love to tease the Mormons about their underwear, but...
And if you don't know the stories, that sounds really weird. But yeah, I mean, that's most of what I've got to go over on this one. I mean, he's got this whole long rant about how Christians are so maligned and they're in such a bad position, and look how we're the ones of all the focus of the bad attention, and everyone's, when you say, God damn it, you're talking about the God of the Bible. You're not talking about Allah or anything else. You're damning our God, and it's our God that's under attack. And dude, you're in the United States. You're in a country where most people are Christian. Therefore, most references to religion are going to be about Christianity. Not that big of a shocker. But he's still got this bug up his butt saying, I'm so persecuted. So, I don't know. I have trouble giving any credence to this, especially when it's filled with examples of just plain old willful ignorance is the only term I have for it. When somebody just ignores what is out there and ignores the truth and ignores what is known and just continues to say, well, I don't believe that.
Yeah, I've got a... This is my little world, and you're not going to come trotting in it.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and take a caller.
It's enough of that
talk
one.
about Mormon underwear. So we've got Tom. How you doing?
Hi. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Pretty well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the thing about the Mormon underwear, because that, actually, even before you mentioned that, I wanted to talk about the Mormons. I think looking at the Mormon Church is very instructive of. If someone really wants to look into the beginnings of Christianity, they should look into Mormonism.
Yeah.
Because Mormonism is only about 175 years old. Mm-hmm. And already among what you might call mainstream Christians in this country, it's accepted. Now, of course, your fundamentalists still have big problems with it.
Right.
Your average Christian would say, oh, they're just another Christian church all that.
Okay.
But the Mormon Church was founded among incredible controversy and violence. And anybody now who would actually look into the beginnings of Mormonism would find stories that are just more incredible than any fairy tale you can imagine. I mean, these are just incredibly ridiculous stories and claims that Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and all the early founders of Mormonism made. But yet, just 175 years, most people have forgotten that, if they ever knew it.
Right.
And that's become acceptable. Can you imagine how much has happened? And that was in the age of, the Mormons are still a minority, and that was in the age of much more advanced communications and printing and all that. Can you imagine what has been suppressed and lost among the origins of Christianity 2,000 years ago?
You're exactly right. Mormonism is a great place to look for a little microcosm of the creation and evolution of a particular religion. Because, as you pointed out, it's become kind of accepted by most, the average Christian, I would say, that, that's just another Christian religion. And it's partially because they don't know too much about Mormon beliefs, and it's partly because Mormons have marketed themselves that way. Yeah. Another testament of Jesus Christ. And they don't really look into it. When you look into the beliefs and compare Mormonism to Christianity, the core tenets and dogma are very, very different. And like you pointed out, the story is absolutely ridiculous. But maybe that's the selling point. Maybe that kind of old half joke about, this is so crazy I couldn't possibly have made it up. That might tend to lend credence somewhere. But yeah, what was it like at the foundation of Christianity when, let's say, they were trying to get accepted over the Roman gods? What did they do? Well, they did something very similar, which is, your Roman gods are just, little pieces of the real God. That type of thing, which was similar to was it Hinduism, where they have one god, Brahman, but he's got all these different facets, and they have idols to different facets, and their belief is that every religion is all worshiping this one god. They're just worshiping a different facet of it or whatever.
Yeah, one difference between, at least up to this point, Mormonism and early Christianity is Mormonism to this point hasn't been able to take over a world power as Christianity did with the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to note that Joseph Smith, before he was assassinated, was going to run for president.
Yeah.
And the Mormon Church, like a lot of Christian sects from the very beginning, have always had political power on their minds. And I wanted to bring up one more thing. You were talking about about Catholicism, about how what's interesting about how the Protestant evangelicals now make alliances with Catholics and also with the Mormons. They will bring them in for political purposes.
Yeah, when they count the number of Christians, yep. That
Even though they don't really believe they're Christians.
Yeah.
And I was reading Frank McCourt's book, Angela's Ashes, recently, and he was brought up in Ireland, extremely fundamentalist Catholic culture, and this was just in the 20th century. And at that, those people believed that the Protestants were condemned to hell, that they had absolutely no chance of getting to heaven because they weren't of the true church. And people nowadays kind of forget about these schisms within the Christian church and how severe they were.
Yeah,
they weren't
actually
just minor little differences in theology. These were people that believed that these other, quote, Christians weren't really Christians and weren't going to go to heaven, we're going to be condemned to hell.
And it still goes on to some extent. I mean, I just got back from Missouri.
To a large extent today.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of dealings with it, but I just got back from my parents' house in Missouri for Thanksgiving, and we were talking about my grandmother had been a Catholic when she married my grandfather, and he was a Protestant, and she, left the Catholic Church, and I guess it nearly killed my great-grandmother. You've left the church, you're going to die, you're going to go to hell. You might, to them or to some of these people, that's no different than becoming an atheist. And and from my point of view, well, they're all atheists. They just happen to believe in one more God than I do.
Right. All right. Thanks, guys. Great.
Thanks a lot for calling.
Thanks for calling. Going to what you were saying earlier, most Christians would accept Mormonism,
right?
Just because they don't really know some of the weird beliefs that they have. I was watching the South Park episode of Scientology, and it's funny when they start explaining the actual beliefs. They're saying, this space alien came down, collected souls, and whatever it was. They flash on the screen.
Yeah.
This is what Scientologists actually believe.
Yeah, I loved that episode. The whole time they're telling this ridiculous story in cartoon format. It's right up there. This is Scientologists actually believe this stuff.
Exactly.
And then my favorite thing, though, was how they ended it. With Stan standing there,
Yeah.
Sue me, go ahead, sue me.
Exactly.
Exactly,
yeah.
That's, I don't know who's
They're
more
famous for
litigious, either the Church of Scientology or Fred Phelps, but, don't sue me for saying that, Fred.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to John. How you doing?
Hello. I want to know, do all atheists look like Dikembe Mutombo?
What?
Dikembe Mutombo, I think. I don't know.
Whatever.
But anyway, we'll go on to Jake. How you doing?
Hey, Don. My question actually, I'm glad you brought up Scientology, because I was wondering if you guys, how much more you know about that.
I actually did a show on
business / religion, because I heard it's the fastest growing religion.
I did a show on Scientology a couple months ago. If you go to the atheistcommunity.org website and click on the area for this television show, you can go back through the old programs, and they're available either on DVD or in MPEG format, and you can listen to that entire thing on Scientology. Basically, in my opinion, it's a big old scam.
Wasn't it the founder who had that famous quote that says, "If you really want to make a lot of money, start a religion"?
Yeah.
So that kind of just gives a little clue to.
You hold a couple cans that are connected to some meter, and they ask you silly questions, and you're trying to remove these alien souls from your body so that they can be free and you can be free and clear the planet, and be careful because Xenu, the evil galactic overlord who's been imprisoned might be breaking out soon, and I think it's a scam.
Right, it's definitely a scam. But I guess I'm also wondering is people who seem to be so blunt now, if people don't care about scams, or if it was almost like some sort of disposition for human nature to
There's been
accept certain things like that, because it's comfortable, especially like with, I don't know.
There's been a lot of the pseudoscience stuff has come up, seems to be gaining more popularity. You've got homeopathy and medium shows and talking to the dead and feng shui and special water. And I don't know, I'm not a sociologist. I'm not sure if this is a trend that waxes and wanes or if we're seeing some, great revival or some injection of catastrophic stupidity upon the population. But yeah, I think, and I've said this before, I think the area that we need to focus on is in education and teaching from a very early age how to think more critically, how to analyze things in a skeptical, reasonable fashion. Because if something is true, it'll hold up to that scrutiny. And if it's not true, then it won't. And if it doesn't hold up to that kind of scrutiny, it's unworthy of your attention, of your time, of your money, which is what most of these things are about, all the way down to putting magnets on my wrist and rocks in my audio speakers to make them sound better, all kinds of crazy stuff.
I think a lot of it is also a form of wishful thinking.
Yeah.
As in, people want to believe something because right now the world as they see it is boring and too mechanical and whatever. And so I agree, it would be really neat if there were a heaven. It'd be really neat if there were psychic powers and you could talk to the dead and stuff like that. If there were ghosts. I mean, that would be kind of cool if it were true. That doesn't make it real. And so I can go to a movie and enjoy movies about all this stuff. I mean, I was a huge Buffy fan when it came out and stuff like that. It's fun to watch that and believe it was real type thing. But you know that it's not. And you should be able to look at this stuff and say, while it's a neat idea, let's say intelligent design, it's not real. It's just wishful thinking and entertainment value, perhaps. But yeah, to say that it's real and stuff like that, no. So
we're gonna have to go on to the caller. Thanks for calling, Jake. You can, if you want more information on the Church of Scientology specifically, I think is it Xenu .net?
I can't remember. I know if you do
Clanbank.org. Clanbank.org, I think, still works.
Okay.
Is that? Let's go into James. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Pretty good.
Hey.
I just wanted to say, praise the Lord, and you guys are going to hell because Jesus is Lord.
Is he? Can you prove it?
Are you there?
Wow. You're a skilled debater, my friend.
I don't know how we're going to counteract that one. Well, I guess that's the end of that.
If I'm going to hell, I'll be in good company. I'll have Ashley there with me. We'll be, accompanied by a lot of the great thinkers and scientists, and
Yep.
And hey, at least I'll still be, alive in some sense. I should call him back. I just wanted to call and tell you that when you're dead, and the worms are going to eat you up.
Yep. You will be fertilizer.
It's, you call under a false pretense just to say that one message and hang up. It would be better to actually have a reasonable discussion about it. If you have a belief in Jesus or that we're going to hell or whatever, I'm open to discussing that. And actually, I would think, as somebody who was a Christian for 20 some odd years, that you, sir, are failing your duties because you're supposed to have a burden for our eternal souls. And rather than just calling in and telling us we're going to hell and hanging up, you should have been trying to convince us that God loves us, that Jesus died on the cross for our sins, and that the only thing that we need to do is accept that and to have eternal salvation. And if we don't, then we'll regret it forever. Like the big billboard I saw when I was driving through Oklahoma. Accept Jesus or regret it forever.
Yep. And assuming that I do meet St. Peter in another 50 years or whatever, and I'm standing there, and he's sending me to hell, James, you're the one I'm going to blame.
Yeah, because you didn't try hard
You
enough.
didn't even try to make a good argument. So,
Weak.
I'm taking you with me.
It's another one of those, the new kind of, I don't know, there's this new breed of Christians where you've got some of them that don't want to get involved in any kind of debate.
Yeah. Praise God, but I don't want to talk about it.
But that's all right. I can understand not wanting to talk about it. What I can't understand is calling up to tell me, I'm going to hell. I was a Christian for 20 some odd years. If I actually believe me, I know that you think I'm going to hell. Fortunately, what you think doesn't have any effect on reality.
Yeah.
So let's go into Chris.
Hey guys, I wanted to comment on some of the comments that the gentleman made earlier about Mormons. What some people forget too is that the Mormons, went to Utah largely because they were viewed as outcasts amongst Christians. Yeah. I mean, basically it was this land that they thought nobody wanted. I mean, Utah is a desert. The other thing too is they first applied for statehood in 1849, and they did not get it until 1896.
Wow, almost 50 years.
Why did it take so long?
The polygamy issue was a big part of it.
Yeah.
So Utah actually ended up being the 45th state. It was the last state before the turn of the century, and only 5 states became states in this century. So I always thought that was interesting, but that held it up for years. In fact, it's apparently written into the Constitution that polygamy is outlawed.
Into the Constitution of Utah?
The Constitution of Utah, yes.
Oh, I was going to say, because I don't remember that from the Constitution of the U.S.
I mean, I don't know. I personally have, religion or not, I personally have no issues with that. If people want to have multiple husbands or wives, that's their business. But, I mean, it's interesting to see how contentious an issue that was. And people forget just how ununified Christianity has been in this country. I mean, coming from a Catholic background, my grandfather in 1927, married a nice Protestant girl, and they could not get married in the church. They had to be married. They could get married by the priest, but it had to be in the priest's house. And that's where they got married. So it was just the priest married them, and and maybe there were a few other people around.
But it was still the Catholic priest who married him?
Yes.
So he's allowed to perform a marriage ceremony in his house that his church doesn't authorize?
That was the case back then, yeah. I mean, it's changed since then.
Wow, that's like...
that was in 1927.
Well, still, though, I mean, a lie is a lie is a lie.
Yeah.
And to me, if the church isn't going to recognize it, then I don't see how a priest could do it, and that seems very hypocritical. But, it's not the first dirty little secret that the Catholic Church has had.
She was very, Grandma was very religious, period, so but she was happy to convert, but it's, even back then, I mean, as I've said, having been raised Catholic, I've certainly seen some anti-Catholicism myself. I mean, it's still out there, but there's not as much of it as there used to be, thank goodness. I mean,
yeah, I remember, and I'm almost too young to actually remember this, but in grade school, Friday for lunch, they would always serve fish. And they used to just call Catholics the fish eaters, just as kind of a derogatory thing. That doesn't happen, anymore, but I remember that. Do you have anything else, Chris?
Not really. It's been a good show. Oh, by the way, Dikembe Mutombo, if you guys don't know, is an NBA player.
Yeah.
Okay, just...
I thought, I didn't want to,
Okay, well, I just thought you guys might want to know that. Okay, bye.
All right.
I don't think I'm tall enough to play in the NBA, and I didn't really want to dignify his comment that much, but... Let's go on to Carmen. How you doing?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Pretty good.
Love your show.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Just a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about is just a statement. Wanted to let you know the things that the children are being taught these days. My niece is about 10 years old, and she's having a lot of questions about God at this point. And she's basically being told that the devil is talking to her and is telling her that God doesn't exist because she's having so many issues with just the fact that a lot of it doesn't make much sense
I had the exact same thing. They don't necessarily phrase it that clearly, but it's the devil is the adversary. The devil is here to attempt to trick us and fool us. And when we have doubts about whether or not God loves us and whether or not Jesus existed or whatever else, that is the devil trying to trick us. Yeah.
Well, it's very sad that
frightening.
she's not being allowed to think and to ask questions. And one of her biggest questions, which is also a question that I have, and maybe you guys could help me explain it to her a little bit better, is in regards to the biblical calendar. And she's having a lot of questions, as I did at her age, in regards to there were people on she phrases it as there were people on the earth before Jesus came. So how is that possible that there were people here before Jesus was born? And I've been trying to explain to her the
Are you
theory
talking about
of
the AD BC calendar?
Right. And and I've been trying to explain to her that Jesus and God are supposed to be the same person, or that's what the Christians believe, that they are the same person. But I guess I'm having a kind of a hard time explaining it to her, and I don't know if you guys could kind of help me out with that.
Maybe I'm confused a bit here, but I mean, the Bible basically says that people were created in Genesis, and then Jesus came so much later after that.
Right.
So
she's confused because Christians believe that God and Jesus are the same person, and she doesn't understand how they are the same person.
Oh, well.
Good question.
Explaining the Trinity is, I can explain the AD-BC calendar. I mean, that was basically pretty arbitrary. Some people got together and said, hey, let's do the new calendar, and we'll start here at somewhere around Jesus' birth as the start date.
Right.
And we'll just, everything before that is before Christ, and everything after is, AD. And there are movements to actually change that so that it's CE for Common Era and BC for that. As for explaining the Trinity, wow. I almost went to seminary and still don't have a good way to explain it. I have a concept of it in my head where the three can be one. I couldn't come up with an explanation which would satisfy her current religious viewpoint. I can explain it away because it doesn't make any sense, and that it seems to be, to me at least, it's like a 4th or 5th century invention, because there's no real definition of a Trinity within the Bible. It's just when you start looking through it and you see, well, Jesus may or may not have claimed to actually be God, but that kind of contradicts some stuff in the Old Testament, so we need a new explanation. And whoops, even after Jesus and during his time, we have the Holy Spirit moving within people. So that could be an agent of God. Even there are a lot of Christians who don't buy the Trinity. And I mean, Newton, a great scientist who was almost insanely religious, he didn't accept the Trinity, which was blasphemy that he could have been killed for. So it's a good thing he didn't, or jailed, probably not killed. I don't have a good answer on the Trinity.
Okay.
It's very contradictory. Again, you hear a lot of people say Jesus and God are the same thing, but then you've got Jesus praying to God when he's alive, and therefore is he talking to himself?
Right.
You're in a tough position too, because
I don't know
as a niece, as it being your niece, I wouldn't be comfortable. My nephew and my niece are being raised in a Christian home.
Right.
I'm an atheist. My brother knows it. I wouldn't be comfortable giving answers about religious topics to my nephew or my niece.
Right. I feel,
as much as I'd love to be honest with them and tell them what Uncle Matt actually thinks, or what I think the explanation is.
They're age appropriate things, and when they
get older, they can ask me whatever, and I'll tell them whatever. But I don't want to trample on what their parents feel is important for them to learn. Although I am talking to their parents.
Well, and I feel I just feel like she needs some sort of outlet, and and I want to be that outlet because she has nobody else. And she just, you know, it's
How old
really
is she?
bad that she's 10 years old and she has nobody that will listen to and give her any answers about anything.
I think probably for me, and this is the approach that I'm going to take, and it's not an attempt to be, I don't know, any type of proselytizing. What I'm going to do with my nephew specifically, and he's only 4.5 now, I just plan to give him gifts and instruction and whatever else on things that are real, with regard to science education, ways where they can find answers about other things that don't necessarily contradict, you know, whatever mythology they're being taught.
Right.
But can help train the brain to think rationally and think, you know, skeptical and critical.
Right.
But as a reminder, we're going to dinner after the show at Mongolian Barbecue, 117 San Jacinto downtown. There's a map on the website. And Carmen, you're welcome to join us.
Okay,
as
thanks.
are any atheist or atheist-friendly people.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, that's one I have not heard any good explanations for. I've looked here and there, but I haven't really seen anything about the Trinity. And
I've seen some explanations which, you know, and they're designed, you know, for kids or students or whatever else.
Yeah.
But and they're decent explanations, but they're all analogies, and they seem to, you know, when you scratch the surface at all, it all starts falling apart.
Yeah. So
I don't. My departure from Christianity had nothing to do with whether or not I could or couldn't accept the Trinity. Actually, I don't think I just always looked at it as, well, if there is a God and this Trinity concept is true, then I can accept it like I accept a lot of other things. And if the Trinity concept isn't new, that wasn't fundamental to my belief. You know, like there's a lot of Christians and Christian sects that don't accept the Trinity. I think Jehovah's Witnesses one, but I'm not positive.
Okay.
I used to have a cheat sheet for religious dogma. I need to make sure I bring that in. Well, this should be interesting. And we got Jeremy. How you doing?
What's going on, guys?
Hey.
I was just going to say, isn't it weird that there's 7 major religions on this planet, and people can think that their one is the correct one? I mean, that's just so fucking retarded. It's so strange.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
it's, like mentioned earlier that everybody's an atheist. It's just that the Christians happen to believe in one more God than I do. Yeah.
You guys have another call coming? I just wanted to say, fuck God.
Not quite what we're here for.
While on one level, I definitely share your sentiment. Since it's a daytime show, we try and avoid getting too belligerent and like that. But Mongolian Barbecue, as a reminder, is on the southeast corner of San Jacinto and 2nd Street. It's not clearly marked, but if you look around, you can find it. And we'll be in there. I'm actually going today. I'll be hobbling in there. But so those of you who want to join us can look, and the cast and the crew will be there. There's a lot of good people working behind the scenes, and some ACA members that you can come down and meet as well. We've got, is it Spence? Spence.
Okay.
Hey guys, great show, man. I watch as often as I can.
Thanks.
I just had a question. I'm agnostic, and correct me if I'm wrong, but an atheist has absolutely no belief in God, and whereas an agnostic believes that you can neither disprove nor prove the existence of God. And while I would debate any Christian on disproving the Bible and their belief in God, I'm very confident that I could do that with a Muslim or a Christian, but I don't think that, as an agnostic, I don't think that you guys as atheists can prove that there is absolutely no existing God.
I agree.
Or an omnipotent, all creator of the universe.
I agree.
That's true.
Okay, so my question is, how come you guys choose the term atheist over agnostic?
The atheist versus agnostic. Atheism is what you believe. Agnosticism is what you know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know for a fact whether there is or is not a God, but I choose not to believe because I haven't seen enough evidence.
Right.
So I'm an agnostic atheist. Most people, when pressed, are agnostic theists. They don't know, they can't prove that there's a God,
right,
but they choose to believe anyway.
Okay.
Agnostic theists. Pat Robertson would call himself a Gnostic theist.
Probably.
He knows that there's a God.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a lot of it depends on how you actually view it. There is Huxleyan agnosticism, which is
more what you were saying,
an assertion that you cannot know, that it is unknowable, that the answer to the question is beyond knowledge, and and therefore they're not going to take a position either way. Is how it's often interpreted. I understand that, and I think you can say that now. In the current status, the answer probably is unknowable, because we don't have the evidence for it. But I don't believe that they're not taking a stance on it, because as far as I'm concerned, and this is more of a philosophical position, as soon as you've been presented with the question and the issues surrounding it, you still make some decision. You either believe or you don't. You may fluctuate between believing and not believing at different times, but if I say, I've got a dragon in my garage, you either believe me or you don't.
Right.
So atheism goes to what you believe, or theism are people who believe in a god or gods, and atheists don't believe in gods. It's not an assertion that we know there are no gods.
I got you. Hey, man, thanks for clearing that up, guys.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Bye.
And actually, Penn Jillette on National Public Radio did a great little article, and you can listen to it as well. He actually went a step further in because of the framing of it, in saying that he believes that there is no God. That's also valid, and it's also an extension of atheism. You are in some cases asserting a position that way by saying, I believe there is no God, but he also acknowledges that he can't prove that his belief is true. It just seems to be the most reasonable explanation based on everything.
Given the evidence that we have.
Yeah, and as the caller before him mentioned about the major world religions all thinking that they're right.
Yeah. It's also important to point out, too, when you're talking about, is there a God, is there not a God, do you believe it or not? What is God?
Yeah.
Because, again, definitions are absolutely everywhere across the board. And so when somebody says, I believe in the all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God, I can positively assert that God does not exist. Because of, the problem of evil, I have not heard of any refutation which even comes close to answering that to my satisfaction. I can definitively say that God does not exist.
Yeah, and that's, when we were talking a few weeks ago about the arguments for and against the existence of a God, the arguments against a God, the first there are counter-arguments or replies to the arguments for the existence of God. They all disprove a specifically defined God.
Yeah.
And because they're all very reliable that way, and because there's so much overlap, I think it pretty much covers the field. And I would say that if you sufficiently define your God, and it's, not something natural like my God is this pen, if you sufficiently define your supernatural God, it can be shown to be logically inconsistent. Yeah, because usually there's always some problem.
There's something in there, yeah.
Let's go on to Vince.
Yes, this question for Ashley. You believe that when we die, that's it? That's the end-all, be-all, and that's the end of our existence?
Of my perception of the world, yes. Obviously, the world continues on without me, but as far as I am concerned and my brain functions and my knowledge of what's happening, yeah, it stops pretty dead.
Well, isn't that, no insult to y'all, 'cause I'm not here to insult anybody, isn't that a bit narrow-minded? Because there's so much out there that humans, can't explain. For example, thought.
Yeah.
How do you explain thought? Your brain,
Well, it's essentially chemical reactions. Basically, what I'm saying, I guess, is we have no evidence that there is something after life, be it reincarnation or heaven or anything else that you care to propose. I don't have any kind of evidence to support that. So while it's a great idea, and I would love it if it were true, I don't see any evidence of that. And so until it comes along, the only reality that we have is that is the end of it. As sucky as that is, that's the end of it, that we know of.
Yeah, that we know of. That's why I'd like to say that it just seems a little narrow-minded in my sense. And I'd just like to add that I'm a college-educated man, and I firmly believe in a God, and I want y'all to know that there's other, let's say, believers out there that aren't as fervent. I don't believe y'all are going to hell. I'm accepting of everything, and I hate it when sometimes people paint us as, religious zealots, what have not.
Yeah.
When there's some of us out there that aren't.
Yeah. I've pointed out on the show many times that though we might talk a lot about the fundamentalist wackos who take the Bible literally word by word, and anyone who doesn't believe exactly what they do is going to burn in hell for all eternity, and they're going to laugh and have drinks over it. We know that is a very, very tiny minority of the people out there, and most Christians are very mainstream and very live and let live, and I have my beliefs, you have yours, and hey, that's cool.
So what religion do you follow? Or
I'm Roman Catholic.
Okay.
And you don't believe that we're going to hell?
No. That's the problem. A good quote that I heard is, religion separates people, but spirituality brings us together. And whatever you believe in, Buddhism, Hinduism, the Wiccans, whatever, as long as it's positive and as long as you're, like I said, just positive. Positiveness can get us anywhere. And when, you get the people that do take the Bible literally, I think that's part of the problem.
I don't mean to be insulting or anything else, but what you're professing to believe is inconsistent with Catholic dogma.
Right, I understand. And like I said, I go to church, I believe in God, I know I'm against our doctrine, but if, God knows me and knows how I think, I don't need to...
So you essentially have you've formed your own opinions and beliefs with regard to God, and those are more important to you, and that's fine.
Right, yeah, it's all about, like I said, believing what you believe, but not believing it so hard that you're going to alienate others and force other people to believe what you believe, or just, there's so much, negativity in the world that we don't need people using the name of God to further propagate those negative actions, feelings, whatever.
Well, I don't know what the name of God is, actually, but since I don't believe in one. But thanks a lot for calling.
I guess the second question would be, though...
Oh, wait, we got another question.
What benefit is there, then, to being an active Christian, again, in your worldview, assuming that there is no, as far as I can tell, no benefit? I'm not going to hell. Assuming somebody lives a good life, they're not going to hell. So why bother going to church or anything like that? Why bother having the belief and tithing or whatever else happens if there's no benefit to it?
That's a good question. I'd like to go with Pascal's wager. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All true.
But I find it personally benefiting because it just makes me feel better, and that's a really loaded question, and there might not be any benefits to you, but I see benefits.
And I can understand that. I mean, as long as you see a benefit to it, then it does have some good to it. Again, very loose analogy here, but going to the movies, I get no benefit out of that. In fact, it's worse off because I have to actually pay to do that. And it's not teaching me anything more about the real world or anything like that. But hey, it's 2 hours of a good time. And so assuming it's not hurting anyone, there's no problem with that. Again, the big thing that we have on this show is just that if that's what you want to believe and you get a benefit from it, all good there, no problems.
Yeah, I would never fault anybody for, I wouldn't try to stop somebody from enjoying their own beliefs. I would encourage everybody to try and, seek out truth, never accept pat answers, and actually investigate things. When you talk about, Pascal's wager as justifying your belief in God, I mean, Pascal's...
It's not justifying it. I'm just saying that could be... That question they gave me was so loaded that could be one possible avenue that you can go down to as far as the benefit.
But the thing is, Pascal's wager is is not sound.
Well, like I said, everything's not sound when you hold a light to it.
No, that's not true.
No, not true.
How do we know that? We don't.
If I drop this pen, is it going to fall?
Right.
Is it going to fall?
Yeah, it is.
Well, how do we know that?
Well, because laws of gravity, trials beforehand.
Yeah, we can observe the world around us, make experiments, investigation, and everything else.
Like spirituality, believing in God, the world in general, there's so much around us that we cannot explain.
But that doesn't, just because you can't explain something doesn't mean that there's some kind of supernatural or divine meaning behind it. Throughout in the entire history, anything we didn't know, people have wanted to plug God in. What causes lightning? God does it. It was Zeus. You keep shoving God into these little gaps, and as our knowledge increases, the gaps start getting smaller and smaller, and pretty soon, hopefully, there'll be no place left for people to stuff a God. Yeah. Because I want to know things as much as anybody else does. I'd love to know the answers. I'd like to know everything. But I accept the fact that I can't know everything, and that humanity probably will never know everything, since, we're going to continue on, hopefully. But the fact that I don't know something doesn't in any way make me want to put some supernatural divine force behind it, add some mystery to, that's mysterious.
No, I'm not saying putting God or something behind it. I'm just saying we're on this little backwater planet of ours thinking that, we can explain everything, when really there might be stuff out there that's a bit beyond our grasp.
Yeah.
And I think it's beneficial for us to admit that and not try to say,
I admit that.
Yeah,
there are things we don't understand.
Yeah, the admission here is that, yes, I agree that there are things that we don't know. And compared to everything that is potentially knowable, most of it we don't know. But that's where the line stops. We do not know about blah. But that doesn't mean that we can then wildly speculate and say, well, I'm going to say that it's God that did it, or we have an afterlife, or whatever you want to call it. And just kind of throw that in there and say, maybe that's a possibility. Maybe that is, but until we have any form of evidence to back it up, it makes no more sense, or it's not any more logically valid than saying it's a hippopotamus dream that we're all existing in. There's no basis of evidence to say that there's an afterlife, or there's reincarnation, or there's a God, or anything else, than anything else. I mean, it's all equally valid. It all means absolutely nothing. The only thing that we can say is we don't know, if it's something that we honestly don't know. Now, there are a lot of things that we do have evidence of. Yes,
it's hard to accept that there are things that we don't know.
It's kind of scary.
We're built to want to know.
Exactly. It's kind of scary. We want to be able to explain why all this stuff happens. Unfortunately, we can't. We're working on it, but we can't at the moment. So until that point, the safest thing and the only logical thing we can do is say, not sure.
Okay. Well,
call us back next week. Maybe we'll know.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for watching and calling in. And we'll go on to another caller in just a second. There was something I mentioned which actually came from Chuck in the studio that was good for something else, and that was the never stop questioning. Always seek answers. And that is something that Carmen, who called earlier about her niece, that's something that you can enforce or influence your niece in that way, to teach her how to seek out answers on her own, to investigate and get the truth behind things. And then you're not actually pushing any kind of agenda, and I need to take that information to heart as well. You're just teaching them not so much how to think, but how to question, how to learn to think, how to learn new things.
Yeah, questioning the world and questioning your beliefs is a very good thing.
Yeah.
Even things that you're solidly entrenched in. Religious or not, just anything, just every now and then, just question it. Is this still a rational and valid belief given what I know now?
I reevaluate things all the time.
And there's nothing wrong with that, and it's troubling. And again, this is usually religious, but politically it comes up also frequently too, is that you're not allowed to question. This is a set of beliefs. You accept this and you do not question it. That's never a good thing.
Yeah.
Because if it can't stand up to hard questioning, then it should be thrown out.
It's useless.
Yeah. So
let's go on to, is it Andrea?
Yeah.
Okay.
want to know, do all atheists believe, in chocolate-covered clitorises?
Well, I'm not opposed to that, but it's not really a part of this show. That caller was supposed to be asking about, do we consider Christmas a holiday? Which I guess we can answer.
Absolutely, yes.
Sure. As long as holiday means day off. If you're going back to the archaic definition of holy day, well, no, I don't consider any day any holier than any other. That's one of the nice things about atheism or accepting a secular worldview, is that rather than every day being a gift from God or whatever, every day and everything is wonderful in itself. This is your one shot at life. It's not some welcome mat where we're wiping our feet on the way to heaven. Or some testing ground.
This is the only day I'm ever going to have in my life that is just like this one.
Yeah.
Make it worth something.
And we got a couple other callers, but we're going to wait a minute and get some names up.
But yeah, as for holidays,
Speaking of holidays,
celebrate, I guess, is a strange word to use for it, but I guess I do enjoy them and look forward to them in a certain sense, because again, most of the holidays now are somewhat secular in a way. Christmas is not about going to church the whole day and praising, Jesus for our life or anything.
Which isn't the origin of Christmas anyway. But
true, it goes back way more than that. But it's about, basically for me, I've got time off of work. I can go see friends and family and stuff like that. I'm going to my girlfriend's family. That's something that's good. I get to see a lot of people I don't normally get to see. I'm off work. I mean, these are all great things. So just because I don't believe that, baby Jesus was born and saved my soul.
Which is kind of funny, since if he actually was born, if Jesus is historically accurate, he wasn't born anywhere near that time. They're off by almost 6 months from the best guess to when he might have possibly been born, if he existed, which I tend to think that there probably was somebody with that name, but I find it largely irrelevant.
Yeah, but then again, from what I've heard, based on that name, that's like saying there was probably a Michael in the United States sometime in 1980. So.
Yeah, because it's really just Joshua is what it is. Going on the Christmas trend, we had a news item brought in. Boston set off a furor this week when it officially renamed a giant tree erected in a city park a holiday tree instead of a Christmas tree. The move drew an angry response from Christian conservatives, including evangelist Jerry Falwell, who heckled Boston officials and pressed the city to change the name back. There's been a concerted effort to steal Christmas, Falwell told. That's a terrible Falwell impression. Although I'll go work on a better one, because I like making fun of him. There's been a concerted effort to steal Christmas, Falwell told Fox Television. Falwell's talking to Fox? Oh, never mind. The Nova Scotia logger who cut down the 48-foot tree was indignant and said he would not have donated the tree if he'd known of the name change. Was the name stamped on the tree when he cut it down? I'd have cut it down and put it through the chipper, Donnie told a Canadian newspaper. If they decide it should be a holiday tree, I'll tell them to send it back. If it was a holiday tree, you might as well put it up at Easter. Well, okay.
Whatever.
Falwell and the Conservative Liberty Council led a campaign that threatened to sue anyone who spreads what they see as misinformation about Christmas celebrations in public spaces.
That is such a...
Falwell and the Conservative Liberty Council led a campaign that threatened to sue anyone who spreads what they see as misinformation about Christmas celebrations in public. You know how many things are wrong with that one sentence? First of all, Falwell's in it.
Right off the bat.
They're threatening to sue anyone who spreads information, and that spreading information, that's free speech. But it's information that they perceive as misinformation about Christmas celebrations in public space. You're an asshat. That's the only word that properly describes you. Oh, you're saying something that I don't like, so we're going to sue you.
Send money.
Well, guess what? Your views of Christmas don't have anything to do with how Christmas started. I mean, do you think that Jesus started Christmas? Are you nuts?
Yeah.
Sue?
And again, somebody on our email list.
Sue me.
Hey, bring it on.
If somebody Flint can take you, I can take you.
Somebody on the email list brought up a good point in this, as in, why would you not want to say it's a holiday season or holiday festival or holiday tree or whatever you want to call it? Because it's simply being more inclusive.
Yeah.
By saying it's a Christmas holiday, then you're saying this is a holiday for Christians. Everyone else can bugger off. By saying it's a holiday, then all the people who are Jewish or Kwanzaa or atheists or Wiccans or whatever, most of them have a holiday that falls right around the same period. And so
what
it's
an
basically
amazing coincidence.
Exactly. It's just saying that, look, everybody has a holiday right now. Let's celebrate that, versus saying, we're going to celebrate the Christian ones, but everybody else, just shut up and get out of the way, okay? We don't need to hear from you. So, yeah, and again, like you say, strange coincidence that Christians happen to have a holiday at the same time as everyone else.
Maybe it's because it's convenient to let everybody off work around the same time rather than accommodating every religious nonsense belief and having, I'm on vacation this week for, Jehamadub.
Though if they do want to start saying that they're going to take all the religious holidays and have them off work, okay. If I can get, 5 days off every month for various religious holidays.
Yeah, I'm changing my religion every day.
Exactly. Okay. So
get as much time off as possible. Let's go on to Trey. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Pretty good.
All right, man. Your show is pretty interesting, man. I really dig how upfront you cats are. Now, I don't 100% share your views, but, man, I dig how you respect other people's views. And if nothing else, I got to admit, some Christians could just learn something from that alone. Respect somebody else's views. Now,
well, thanks. I think Jerry Falwell might disagree with you there. But
yeah, but still, I'm just being honest. That's how I feel. And that the dogma and some of the stuffiness of that, it's man-made and that's obvious. But I do got some questions, man, because I'm a kind of a philosophical kind of cat. And I'm wondering, if you take atheism, or if you take some of the great scientists from Darwin and other these cats, and then take some of these great Christian people who've written some of this, the Bible type of thing, well, if you go back far enough, they both agree. It's really weird. Because the great scientists all agree, and so the Christians agree, everybody, that at one point in time, there was absolutely nothing. There was no time. There was one point in time, and there was absolutely nothing in the universe. Now, something happened. It was a big bang, or what have you, but it started it. And I'm just thinking, man, I got to think that something had to cause that effect, my brother. I don't know what, but something, some kind of an intelligence, I would think, because, when I
why
think about
does it have to be intelligence?
Yeah.
And how it is, and how the brain is, and how the pancreas is, and how we are, and it just seems to me that there's some kind of design there. I just can't imagine us just ending up like on luck. And they say this world is like tilted on its axis some kind of way, a couple inches wrong this way, a couple inches that way, we'll all die, we'll freeze, we'll burn up. That's some shit, man. I'm just saying, man, that to me implies some type of intelligence, and I just wonder, how do you cats deal with that question? Is it one of those, we just don't deal with that part of it, we don't go back that far, or, really, how does that work with you cats? Go ahead and run it on me, man.
I'll let you do it, but I want to interject one thing. One thing you need to remember, whenever you're looking at that and perceiving design and perceiving order and oh my gosh, if just one little detail was just a little bit wrong, we wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
You are overlaying a bias. You're implying that we were an intended result. The thing is, if anything was different, if certain things were different, yes, we wouldn't exist, but we wouldn't be having the conversation.
True.
Now, how likely those things are, whether you start with Big Bang and work, whether time started then, and there's a lot of competing theories about that, and in some cases, some of those may never be known. But the thing is, if you flip a coin, it's going to come up heads or tails. So if you flip it 4 times, the odds of getting heads 4 times in a row are 1 in 16. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
How long do you think it would take to come up with that?
I'm not sure.
Probably...
But my point is, who's flipping the coin?
Well...
You see what I'm saying?
Now...
Somebody's flipping the coin, bro.
You're implying an intelligence. You're implying an intelligence without proving that one is required.
How is that thing flipping without anything making it flip? I don't know.
There's no real point. It's an analogy.
All right, man. Go ahead. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
So anyway, if you figure a coin a second, it'd take about 16 seconds or so, or 16 minutes, whatever. If you give 1 million of those coins to everybody in China, and you pick a specific combination of head, tail, pick it in advance, and have everybody in China flipping, the odds of getting that sequence become almost 1 in relatively short amount of time. There's a lot going on and a lot of changes and combinations and a lot of possibilities.
I feel you.
To imply that just because, is it possible, if it's possible at all, that we are the result of a long series of events, random mutation, natural selection, blah, 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 that get up to us. If that's possible at all, then it's incumbent upon anybody who says there was an intelligence behind it to demonstrate that there actually was or had to be. And so far, every time that anybody comes up with any kind of argument to say, well, there had to be some intelligence behind it, no, there doesn't.
And you're absolutely right. There's absolutely never any kind of real proof that we can put our hands on. But again, like the other caller said, there's no proof that it's not either, though.
But that's not the point. You don't have to prove that it's not. The default assumption, if this is possible without the intervention of a God, and you want to claim that, well, it may be possible without the intervention of a God, but God did it, then you need to prove that there's a God. And I don't mean you specifically, but whoever.
And also, you had mentioned about chance. Is it possible or probable that all of this, the pancreas, for instance, could come about by chance? Well, chance is what puts something there in terms of genetic mutations over, the past umpteen billion years. The differences in the genetic mutation were random. But evolution and natural selection is decidedly not random. If there's a benefit there, then that is more likely to survive. If it's something detrimental, it's more likely to die. That is not, a flip of a coin.
No, I'm agreeing with you on that. I'm saying is, where did that matter come from? We're talking about flipping coins, you and I. And he's talking about, he made a good announcement about flipping coins and people over in China. Okay, but I'm saying, where did the people in China come from to flip the coins, man? That's just what I'm. Let me say that's enough of that. I got you, man. Well, again, I appreciate that answer. It's cool.
That goes back.
One more thing. The thing about Jesus.
Well, actually, let me answer that.
Oh, okay, sure. I'm sorry. Okay.
Going back to where did it all come from type thing. That goes back to what we were talking about earlier on the show. It's one of those things that we have to say, not sure.
Not sure, okay.
Science doesn't have a really good, solid explanation for that. And so the only thing that we can honestly say at this point is, don't know. If you want to plug something in there and say it must have been God, then, okay, fine, I'll accept the hypothesis.
I won't even say that. I'll say it must have been something. I won't even say God, but something.
Okay, well, I'll agree with that.
Okay.
If we're going to be that vague about it, sure, something did it.
Something, dude, make something, man.
But to imply that something had to be intelligent or conscious, something like that, that I'm going to fall down.
Because you and I are intelligent. I'm listening right at you. I'm looking right at you, bro, and I'm listening to you, and I'm telling you, you are an intelligent Caucasian individual. Bottom line. So
thank you.
If I'm implying that you were somehow made or something, you came from something that was made, then I'm implying, you came from an intelligent source, and that's why, damn, you're damn intelligent. Now, we have a choice on this planet to be intelligent or not, and some of us are and some of us aren't. My next thing is, man, the thing about Jesus, God, and the Holy Spirit, real quick, I'll just share this with you because you said you didn't have an answer. I'm going to give you one, and it might not be one you like, but this is the one I've heard, and I kind of can feel this one. In the beginning, it said flat out, when he would start to make man, supposedly he created this and that, and the spirit, first of all, was brooding over the earth, and then when it saw that it was vast and dark, he spoke and said, let there be light. Okay, by the time he got up to man, if you notice right there in Genesis, early in Genesis, by the time he said, I'm going to make a man, if you look at that real closely, because it tripped me out, he said, now let us make a man in our image.
Are you talking, which creation account are you talking about?
Creation with the Christian Bible, just a regular old flat out, the basic thing in there.
I know, I've got one right here. The thing is that there's one account in Genesis chapter 1 and another account in Genesis chapter 2, and they tell a different story about the order of creation. So which one are you referring to?
They both are very clear on one thing. We're making
it's a slightly separate point.
Yeah.
That's my point. That's our image. And so what I'm saying is, at the beginning of time, supposedly when they were making all of this, God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit were all separate beings. This is how I understood it.
Hang on a second. Hang on a second. I'm going to put you on hold. I didn't hang up. You are making an interpretation and overlaying your own perspective on what us there means. And it's Elohim and it's plural in the original Jewish text. you're overlaying Jesus and the Holy Spirit on that. They're not mentioned at all. Other religions, Judaism, for example, or Islam, when they look at that passage, overlay their own interpretation, which has nothing to do with Jesus and the Holy Spirit. Mormonism, for example, consider the Elohim to be a race of gods, and Jehovah was just one of them. And there's a lot of names in the Old Testament for God, and another explanation is that all of these names of God are actually names of Babylonian gods, where they took a conglomerate of them and combined them together to make one big powerful God. So while you can say that the us there is Jesus and the Holy Spirit, that's still just your interpretation of it.
That's true. That's very true. I'll grant you that. You asked the question, whether or not you hadn't heard of the explanation. You had
Exactly.
I don't
Trinity.
One at all.
That would be his definition of the Trinity.
Okay, I understand that you can interpret that as a claim about the Trinity, but it doesn't explain the Trinity.
No, I can't explain that.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah, you and I are in the same boat.
I'm just going to tell you how I learned it, and that's one of the explanations that I got, because it's one of the things that Christians fight about, God, Him being one. I truly believe if there is, that whole thing is true. Then Jesus was praying to God. He wasn't praying to Himself. When He said He's going to sit at the right hand of the Father, I mean, you'd have to be a separate being for that. It's a lot of stuff like that, man. Yeah. But I dig you cats, man. As far as, man, y'all all right with me, man. And
thanks a
lot.
lot.
On the show, and man, you never know. One of us will see the light one day.
Maybe so.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks for calling. We got,
There you go.
There we go. Yeah, we got about 4 minutes left, 3 minutes left. We're going to get to another caller here in just a second. Just a reminder, we're going to Mongolian Barbecue after the show, 117 San Jacinto downtown. The map's on the website, atheist-community.org. If you didn't get through, or if you have questions or comments afterwards, and for those people who are watching this on DVD or on the internet or listening to the audio after the fact or seeing a rebroadcast, you can email us at tv@atheist-community.org. And we'll be happy to answer. That email goes to everybody in the cast and crew. Let's go on real quick. And Dominic.
Hey there, guys.
Hey.
I think I just now came up with a God that y'all and everybody can agree on.
Okay.
Energy. Energy is our creator. It was there at the beginning. It's all around us, and it'll be there at the end. And it's all around, and, well, energy is a God that we can all accept, right?
Well,
labeling it as
labeling
it as God puts a lot of extra baggage on that I don't think it's conscious. I don't think it's guided and intelligent, and God implies those things. So
you're changing the definition.
Exactly.
God? What's the Webster definition of God?
I don't really know.
Don't have a Webster dictionary.
It doesn't really matter. When you're talking about what a word means, dictionaries are really helpful in some cases, but they're not always completely accurate, and they don't necessarily describe what a word means in a given situation, which is why when we start talking about arguments for and against the existence of a God, the first thing we need to find out is, what's your definition of God? Because if your definition is energy, okay, I believe in your God.
Yeah.
I don't believe he's conscious, but...
Don't think it's conscious. Don't think it's going to do anything to me if I, have bad sex partners.
For y'all.
Sure.
As you as atheists, well, the Bible doesn't exactly do anything to describe how the world works around us, but it does have good moral teaching. Atheists,
we got
to disagree.
I'm going to let you go because we're out of time, but I'll talk about that